My name is Brandon and welcome to Gotta Play 'Em All, a show where I'm embarking on the arduous task of playing, reviewing, and ranking every single Pokémon game ever released to find out which one is the very best, like no one ever was. We are right in the midst of Pokemania now, and the spin-off titles are coming. As we know, Pokemon Gold and Silver had a bit of a tortured development cycle, resulting in them receiving significant delays. Luckily for us, there was a tidal wave of alternative titles to keep Pokemon-obsessed kids placated. Today we are looking at Pokémon Snap, a fondly remembered and much loved entry in the franchise. While the Japan-only stadium was focused on the battling concept introduced in the main games, and the Pokemon trading card game was an adaptation of the TCG, Snap was something entirely different. Pokemon Snap marked the first time the Pokemon franchise was trying something truly different in the game space. The gameplay wasn't adapting something or focusing on a specific pre-existing aspect. Pokemon Snap was released for the Nintendo 64 on March 21, 1999 in Japan, and on June 30, 1999 in America. As I said, this game is beloved, so it was no surprise to see the game re-released on the Wii Virtual Console, and eventually the Wii U Virtual Console. The developer in charge of this title was HAL Laboratory, who were returning to the Pokemon franchise after developing the first Pokemon Stadium. HAL was arguably the second most important developer for the franchise at this point in time, as they'd also go on to develop what we know in the West as Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. However, Pokemon Snap wasn't always supposed to feature Pokemon. According to the former Nintendo CEO, the late Satoru Iwata, Snap was originally a normal game where you took photos, but HAL was struggling to come up with ideas that would motivate players to actually play. It wasn't until somebody had the genius idea to introduce Pokemon into the concept that HAL believed they had a clarified direction. Critically, Pokemon Snap was a definitive success. It sits on a 77 Metascore, receiving an 8.3 from EGM, 8 from GameSpot, and 7.8 from IGN. It's not quite the heights of the main series, but not too shabby for a game about taking photos. Commercially, Snap was also a massive success. It sold 3.6 million copies, which makes it the 11th highest selling game on the Nintendo 64. It missed out on a top 10 spot by 20,000 copies, just being pushed out by a bear and a bird. Heck, it sold better than Majora's Mask. Pokemon Snap was a bona fide hit. However, will it still hold up in 2020? It has been a very long time since I've played Pokemon Snap, so let's jump in and see what it's all about. Wow, I've got to say, Pokemon Snap holds up a lot better than I thought. As a kid, I absolutely adored this game, but as I grew up and returned to it, I wasn't ever a big fan, for a number of reasons I will touch on in this review. For the most part though, my time with Snap, I was having an absolute blast. For those of you who are unaware, Pokemon Snap is all about capturing Pokemon, but not in the way you usually would. Instead of capturing them with a Pokeball, you're capturing them on film. Here you assume the role of Todd Snap, a talented young photographer who has been invited to the secluded Pokemon Island by Professor Oak. If the name Todd Snap rings a bell or he looks familiar, you might remember him from the Pokemon anime. This is the first time the show was explicitly used as a marketing tool, featuring a small arc where Todd joined the crew to promote the upcoming game. Apparently the writers loved him so much that they brought him back a second time, despite Pokemon Snap never getting a sequel. There was also a period of time where you could print off photos you had taken in the game in Blockbuster stores that had a sticker station. Pokemon Island is only inhabited by Pokemon, despite clear signs of human construction, which makes it the perfect place to study them in their natural element. Your goal in this game is to snap the inhabitants of Pokemon Island. You travel through different courses on the 01, which is confined to a track, and that's basically the entire premise of Pokemon Snap. Very basic, but it manages to be a whole lot of fun. From the moment the opening hit, I was in love with this game all over again. The game boots up, and you're hit with a really peaceful track that also invokes a feeling of mystery and wonder. Todd Snap is shown in his element trying to get photos, before he has a chance encounter with Mew. It's just the intro, but damn, it sets the vibe perfectly. Once you get into the actual game, you'll be greeted by Professor Oak, who plays a much greater role than he has in the main series games so far. He gives you a basic rundown of the game's concept, and he even has little voice clips from the anime. It's not much, but I appreciated it. Before you know it, you're all of a sudden thrust into the 01 and heading through the beach course. The game honestly teaches you nothing about how to play it. You're basically thrown into the deep end and asked to figure it out. But once you've actually landed, you quickly realize that the deep end is actually just a kiddie pool. I'm not exaggerating when I say it will take you 30 seconds to get the hang of the controls. All you're doing here is aiming the camera with the analog stick, looking through your camera lens with Z, and then snapping a photo with A. It couldn't possibly be more simple. It does get slightly more complex later on, but it's still basic. Some people might be intimidated by a JRPG, a battle simulator, or a TCG, but Pokemon Snap is accessible to everyone. The game also doesn't teach you the ins and outs of what constitutes a good photo in this game. You see, the goal of your adventures on Pokemon Island is to take good photos that are scored by Professor Oak. When you come to the end of a level, all of your photos are shown to you, and you're tasked with picking the best one of each Pokemon species you captured. When you first run through the beach course, you will have no idea what you're looking for. However, I found that the way this plays out is really well done. You'll get to your first photo evaluation from Professor Oak and probably not do too well, but this works as such a great teaching moment. Oak will explain that the subject of your photos was too far away, that you should make sure they're facing the camera, and to ensure they're centered in the frame. He'll also make mention of trying to capture Pokemon doing unique things, such as using a move. And by doing all of that, I immediately had a perfect grasp on what I needed to do in this game to get good scores. Hal could have dumped this information on users before they jumped into the 0-1, but I love that they let you try, fail, and then give you perfect feedback. Each time you snap a new Pokemon species, they're recorded in the Pokemon report, which is essentially your Pokédex. You can also choose to personally save photos to your album, so if you get any particularly memorable ones, you can hold on to them forever. At this point, for those of you who have never played the game before, you might be wondering how you progress throughout the game. Well, that's where the point system largely comes in. You unlock various things as you gain more points from Professor Oak. Sometimes this is a new level, sometimes this is a new item for you to use. Several items will expand your horizons on Pokemon Island and give you access to new Pokemon. For example, the apple item allows you to lure Pokemon to certain spots, while the Pestiball can make hidden Pokemon appear. You'll also get a Pokeflute, which naturally is used to wake up sleeping Pokemon. Drip feeding you new items was a great idea because it makes re-exploring old courses feel worthwhile. Every time I got a new item, I couldn't wait to replay literally every course I had unlocked to see what new Pokemon I could find and what new situations I could invoke. However, there are times where the grind to unlock new items can become tedious. There will be moments where nothing new is available for you, so you keep redoing tracks over and over again, hoping your photos were better than previous attempts. You see, you don't simply stack points every time you take photos. You only get one set of points per Pokemon. For example, if I snapped a photo of Pikachu and got 2,000 points, and then later snapped one that got 1,500, I would still only have 2,000 points. The 1,500 points would simply not exist. The moments where I had to grind out the final few thousand points to go to a new course or get a new item were pretty rough, and easily one of my least favourite parts of the game. Levels are generally short and sweet, but once you play through them a handful of times, it becomes tedious due to how slow you move. The ability to speed up your vehicle is a godsend later on, but it would have been much nicer to have it earlier in the game. Maybe they could have just given you access to this ability on every subsequent playthrough of a course. You don't just unlock new courses via points though. Throughout certain courses, there are set pieces you can trigger which will unlock a new path on the course, which results in a brand new environment for you to travel to. I found that these were generally pretty easy to discover, but it was fun to keep an eye out for them, and Todd's reactions were hilarious. Similar to the main series games, there are two overall goals here. Like you would in Red, Blue and Yellow, there's the big picture goal of capturing them all, but there's also a secondary goal that marks the end of the story. After playing through the 6 courses, you'll meet with Professor Oak, who has noticed that there are mysterious formations in each course resembling a Pokemon. He tasks you with snapping all of these, and once you do, a final location is unlocked, where you go to space and snap a photo of Mew. This essentially plays out like a boss battle, and snapping a good photo of it is basically the equivalent of beating the Pokemon League. Once that's been done, the only thing left to do is round up the missing Pokemon. This might sound like it would add a fair amount of content to the game, but it really doesn't. There are only 63 Pokemon present in this game, a slight increase from Pokemon Stadium, but still a far cry from what we have seen in the main series. At this point in time, we are still waiting for a console game that featured all 151 Pokemon. It will take you no more than a couple of hours to encounter Mew, and by that time you will have snapped the overwhelming majority of Pokemon available to you. Pokemon Snap's biggest weakness is just how light it is for content. Personally, I would have loved to have seen a much more expanded version of this game. Taking the Mew boss battle concept, it would have been really cool to have that applied to all 5 legendary Pokemon in Kanto. I would have made it so after each normal course, you have a boss battle course where the main goal was trying to get the legendary Pokemon to appear. For example, after completing the beach course, a second course would open up where you try to encounter one of the legendary birds. This would then repeat all the way up to Mew. That's basically my one negative for the game though. As I mentioned in regards to the intro, I freaking love the vibe of this game. Every level inspires this childlike wonder and imagination within you. This whole Pokemon Island concept is really well done. I was always so eager to see what the next course would be so I could explore a brand new environment. I genuinely felt like a 5-year-old kid again. Similarly, I love how peaceful the game is. I'm not sure whether it was because of how stressful the entire world's situation is right now, but playing this game felt so calming. One of Pokemon Snap's biggest strengths is that you never fail. I enjoy a challenging video game, but every now and then you just want something that is laid back and won't kick your ass. Pokemon Snap is the ideal game for those times. The worst thing that can happen in this game is that Professor Oak doesn't grade your pictures very highly. You never die. You're never forced to replay one specific section over and over again because you suck at the combat or can't make a particular jump. Never do you find yourself in a stressful situation in Pokemon Snap. The 2 hours I spent with it were bliss. I honestly think this might be my favourite chill-out game of all time. One of the big factors that contributes to that is the soundtrack. I'm not usually someone who pays too much attention to soundtracks, but Snap's really connected with me. Even if you don't want to play the game or don't have access to it, I highly recommend seeking out the OST. You won't regret it. Lastly, I need to touch on the graphics. I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag because Todd honestly looks kind of nightmarish. However, I think the environments look fine and the Pokemon models are well done. Considering HAL was the team behind Pokemon Stadium, those models were probably repurposed here, which is fine by me. They are really good 3D recreations of the Pokemon for a game made in the late 90s.
Assignment? Photograph the elusive Pokemon. How do you do it? You're gonna be fast. Ah, missed him.
And you better be good.
Ah.
Great pictures. That's the name of the game in Pokemon Snap. You can go to a participating Blockbuster store, print out your best shots, grab an entry form, and mail it to Nintendo's Take Your Best Shot contest. The best shot wins an Australian safari for 4. And there's lots of other great prizes.
Ah.
Many will enter, few will win.
Hang on, it's gotta be fun.
Pokemon Snap. Take your best shot.
If you've watched this far, I don't think you'll be surprised to hear that I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Pokemon Snap. I went into this extremely skeptical, but came out with a completely different point of view. I don't necessarily put it on a pedestal like some others do, but I really appreciate it for what it is. It's one of the most peaceful and pleasant gaming experiences I have ever had. If you ever need something to calm the nerves for a couple of hours, this is what I'd recommend. It honestly blows my mind that we've never seen a sequel. With so many more Pokemon available now and much more powerful consoles, you could easily make a much more fleshed out version. Considering how well Snap sold, how well anything with the Pokemon brand on it sells, how well Switch games sell, and how much nostalgia exists, it is insane that this has been left to collect dust. Hopefully one day the Pokemon company gets back to it. With all of that said, it's time to rank Pokemon Snap. There were moments where I genuinely thought this would take top spot. That's how much this experience resonated with me. But there was just one nagging flaw that put doubt in my mind and ultimately gave it a lower ranking. There just isn't enough content here, both in terms of Pokemon quantity and how many levels you get to explore. Excluding almost 100 Pokemon is a little frustrating, and only including a handful of courses is a bummer. I didn't want this experience to end, but 2 hours in I had basically experienced everything there was to experience in the game. Ultimately, I decided to place it in 3rd place. While I would probably choose to replace Snap before replaying the Kanto games, you can't deny that they're revolutionary. If Snap had just a little bit more content on offer, it would have probably run away with top spot. With Snap's ranking, we finally have a top 5. In last place, we have Pocket Monsters Stadium. In 4th place is Pokemon Trading Card Game. In 3rd place is Pokemon Snap. In 2nd place is Pokemon Red and Blue. And still in 1st place is Pokemon Yellow. Next time, I'll be reviewing Pokemon Pinball. This is a spin-off I have never played before, so that's always exciting. Could a pinball game really land itself amongst the upper echelon of Pokemon games? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out.